Gabriella's hands trembled as she clutched the termination letter, her manager's cold words still ringing in her ears. "We appreciate your time here, but the company is downsizing. Downsizing." That was their polite way of saying they no longer had use for her. The office around her buzzed with hushed whispers. People avoided her gaze as if unemployment was contagious. She had given 3 years of her life to this company, staying late, skipping vacations, and now, just like that, she was disposable. She forced herself to breathe, her vision blurring as she grabbed her coat. She wouldn't let them see her cry. She walked toward the glass doors, head high, but as soon as she stepped outside into the crisp New York air, the weight of it all crashed into her. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Her savings were nearly drained. What was she supposed to do now? "Excuse me." The voice was deep, smooth, and unmistakably refined. Gabriella turned, her breath hitching. A man stood a few feet away, leaning casually against a sleek black car that probably cost more than she'd earned in the past 5 years combined. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a tailored dark suit that screamed wealth. His piercing blue eyes studied her with quiet intensity. "I couldn't help but overhear," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You just lost your job." Embarrassment burned through her. "That's not really anyone's business, is it?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. "Maybe not, but I'm in need of a new personal assistant." Gabriella blinked. "Excuse me." "I'm offering you a job," he said simply, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "I need someone efficient, sharp, and unafraid to speak their mind." His gaze swept over her, assessing. "You seem like a woman who doesn't back down easily." She scoffed. "You don't even know me." His expression didn't waver. "I know enough." He extended his hand. "Liam Calloway." Her stomach dropped. Liam Calloway. The name was everywhere: business magazines, financial reports, news articles. A self-made millionaire who had built his empire from the ground up. He was known for his ruthless business tactics, but also for his philanthropy. She hesitated, unsure if this was some kind of joke. "Why would a millionaire randomly offer me a job?" he shrugged. "Call it instinct." Instinct? This had to be a setup. People didn't just hand out jobs on the street. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't even know what this job involves," she said cautiously. Liam's gaze didn't waver. "Come to dinner with me tonight, I'll explain everything." Dinner with a man like him. She barely had enough money to afford groceries for the week, let alone accept an invitation to a high-end restaurant. "I don't date strangers," she said quickly. He chuckled, a low, rich sound. "It's not a date, it's a business discussion." Gabriella hesitated. This was insane, completely reckless, but she had nothing left to lose. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "But if this is some kind of setup, I'm walking out." "Fair enough," Liam said smoothly. With that, he opened the car door for her, and against her better judgment, she slid inside. The restaurant was beyond anything Gabriella had ever experienced. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over velvet-lined booths, and the scent of expensive wine lingered in the air. The hostess greeted Liam by name and led them to a private table with a view of the city skyline. Gabriella felt painfully out of place. She had thrown on her best blouse, but it was nothing compared to the women here, draped in designer dresses and diamond jewelry. Liam, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. He ordered a bottle of wine without glancing at the menu, then turned his attention to her. "I meant what I said earlier," he told her. "I need an assistant. My last one quit unexpectedly and I don't have time for interviews." "That sounds like a you problem," she said before she could stop herself. Liam actually laughed. "I like that. You're not afraid to push back." She folded her arms. "You don't even know if I'm qualified." "I've read the reports." Gabriella frowned. "What reports?" Liam leaned forward slightly. "I looked into your work history." She gaped at him. You ran a background check before speaking to me. I don't take risks in business, he said simply. Your former boss was an idiot for letting you go. Something about the way he said it so matter-of-fact made her stomach tighten. What's the catch? She asked. Liam smirked. The hours are long, the expectations are high, and I don't tolerate incompetence. But the salary is generous and you'll have full benefits. Gabriella hesitated. This was too good to be true. A week ago, she was worried about making rent, and now a millionaire was offering her a high-paying job over dinner. I need to think about it, she said finally. Liam nodded as if he expected that answer. Take the night, but if you say yes, be at my office at 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow, she swallowed hard. And if I say no, his gaze didn't waver. Then we go our separate ways. Gabriella studied him, trying to understand why a man like Liam Calloway would take an interest in her. But there was no arrogance in his expression, no hidden agenda, just patience. She had spent years working for a company that discarded her without a second thought. Maybe it was time to take a risk. Maybe it was time to bet on herself. Gabriella barely slept that night. Every logical part of her screamed that this was reckless, but another part, the part that was tired of struggling, told her this was her chance. So the next morning, she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stepped into the towering glass skyscraper that bore Liam Calloway's name. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Gabriella exhaled. "Yes, I have an appointment with Mr. Calloway." And with those words, she stepped into a new life, one she never saw coming. Gabriella stood in the grand office, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a sprawling view of the city, the morning light reflecting off glass skyscrapers in a way that made everything feel untouchable, like a world she didn't belong in. The space itself was impossibly sleek, all dark wood and steel, with shelves lined with books that looked untouched yet carefully curated. Liam sat behind an enormous desk, reviewing a document with the kind of effortless focus that suggested he was used to making decisions that shaped industries. He barely glanced up as he gestured toward the chair in front of him. "Sit." Gabriella hesitated for half a second before lowering herself into the leather seat. She wasn't intimidated, at least. That's what she told herself, but there was something about Liam Calloway that demanded complete control of every space he entered. "You're punctual," he noted, setting the paper aside. "That's a good start. I figured it wouldn't be wise to show up late on my first day." His gaze flickered over her, assessing without being intrusive. "Smart." She laced her fingers together, keeping her posture straight. "Before we begin, I need to know what exactly my role entails. I'm not signing up for something blind." Liam leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the desk in slow, deliberate movements. "You'll manage my schedule, filter through correspondence, and ensure that things run smoothly without unnecessary disruptions. My time is valuable and I don't like it wasted." Gabriella arched a brow. "Are you saying I'm not allowed to waste it?" "Precisely." There was no humor in his tone, no teasing edge. He was serious, and she realized then that working for Liam Calloway wouldn't just be a job, it would be a test, one she had to pass every single day. "And what happens if I do?" she asked. He didn't blink. "You won't." The certainty in his voice made something tighten in her stomach. This wasn't a man who entertained failure, and yet, for reasons she still didn't understand, he had chosen her. She exhaled slowly. "All right." "Where do we start?" Liam pushed a folder across the desk. "Your first task is inside." Gabriella flipped it open, scanning the contents. A list of names, a few notes scribbled in the margins, and a schedule packed so tightly there was barely room to breathe. Meetings with investors, negotiations with suppliers, a charity event that required meticulous planning. "This is for the next 3 days," she asked, disbelief creeping into her voice. Liam nodded. Get used to it. She closed the folder with a quiet snap. Fine. But if you expect me to keep up, I'll need access to your email, your contacts, and a clear understanding of how you handle business. Something flickered in his expression, not quite surprise, but something close. You're direct. I don't like wasting time either, she countered. For a brief moment, she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch, but it was gone before she could be sure. Then we'll get along just fine. Gabriella spent the rest of the day buried in work, navigating a world that was equal parts exhilarating and exhausting. Liam's empire was built on precision. Every meeting, every call, every decision was calculated down to the last detail. There was no room for hesitation, no space for uncertainty. By mid-afternoon, she had rearranged his schedule to optimize efficiency, flagged irrelevant emails, and even managed to reschedule a meeting with a notoriously difficult investor. She barely had time to process what she'd done before Liam stepped out of his office, his sharp gaze locking onto her. You moved the meeting with Gerard Linton. Gabriella met his stare head-on. Yes, his assistant mentioned he prefers early mornings. I saw an opening and adjusted accordingly. Liam studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Good. Just like that, he disappeared into another meeting, and Gabriella released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Was this what working for him would be like? A constant dance of high-stakes decisions and unspoken expectations. She wasn't sure, but one thing was clear: she was in deep. By the time evening rolled around, Gabriella had barely eaten, her stomach protesting as she powered through another set of emails. The office was quiet now, most employees having gone home, but Liam remained, reviewing documents with the same level of intensity he had that morning. After what felt like hours, he finally looked up. You're still here. Gabriella glanced at the clock, surprised to see how late it had gotten. I wanted to finish organizing tomorrow's agenda. Liam's expression remained unreadable. You don't have to prove yourself. You wouldn't be here if I thought you couldn't keep up. She wasn't sure why, but his words settled something inside her, an unspoken assurance that she hadn't just been given a chance. She had earned it. Still, she wasn't about to let him think she was intimidated. Well, if I fall behind, you'll probably fire me, so I'd rather stay ahead. Liam let out a quiet breath, something that could have been amusement but wasn't quite. Go home, Gabriella. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before gathering her things. As she reached the door, she heard his voice again, softer this time. You did well today. Gabriella paused, something unfamiliar warming her chest. She didn't turn around, didn't let him see the way those simple words affected her. Instead, she walked out of the office, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. She had stepped into Liam Calloway's world, and something told her she would never be the same. Gabriella barely had time to adjust to the relentless pace of working for Liam Calloway before things escalated. 2 weeks in, she had mastered his schedule, anticipated his requests before he voiced them, and streamlined his correspondence. She had expected him to be demanding, but not this intense. His world was a constant storm of negotiations, power plays, and decisions that impacted entire industries. Yet she found herself thriving in the chaos. Then, everything shifted. Late one evening, she was reviewing final details for a high-profile gala Liam was hosting for his foundation. The event was set to be a spectacle, an elite gathering of business moguls, politicians, and philanthropists, all under the pretense of charity. But really, it was another battlefield for influence and power. Liam had left for a brief meeting, and Gabriella was putting the final touches on the guest list when a sharp voice cut through the office. You must be the new assistant. She looked up to see a woman standing in the doorway, effortlessly elegant in a fitted navy dress, her dark hair swept into a flawless chignon. Her gaze was piercing, assessing Gabriella with quiet calculation. Gabriella stood. "And you are?" The woman stepped further inside, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Eleanor Whitmore." The name sent a ripple of recognition through Gabriella. Eleanor Whitmore was a powerhouse in the corporate world, a venture capitalist known for her ruthless efficiency. But more than that, she was Liam's former fiancé. Gabriella kept her expression neutral. "Liam isn't here at the moment," Eleanor smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. "I know." "I came to see you." Gabriella's fingers tightened around the folder in her hands. "Why?" Eleanor took a slow, deliberate step closer. "You've done well, I'll give you that." "Most of his assistants barely last a month." Gabriella lifted her chin. "I don't scare easily." Eleanor's lips curved ever so slightly. "Good. Then let me give you a piece of advice. You're playing a dangerous game if you think he sees you as anything other than an employee." Gabriella stiffened. "I don't think anything." Eleanor studied her, then laughed softly. "You will." With that, she turned and walked out, leaving Gabriella standing in the silence, her pulse unsteady. She didn't have time to dwell on Eleanor's words because Liam returned moments later, his presence filling the space with its usual quiet command. Gabriella forced herself to focus. Eleanor Whitmore was here. Liam barely reacted, setting a folder on his desk. "I'm aware." She hesitated. She had some opinions. His gaze lifted to hers, steady and unreadable. "She usually does." Gabriella exhaled, realizing she would get nothing from him. But something about Eleanor's visit lingered, unsettling in a way she couldn't quite name. The night of the gala arrived sooner than she expected. Gabriella had attended formal events before, but nothing like this. The venue was transformed into a masterpiece of luxury. Golden chandeliers cast a soft glow over the room, and waiters moved seamlessly between guests, offering champagne on silver trays. The crowd was a sea of wealth and status, the kind of people who shaped the world with the stroke of a pen. Gabriella had been given strict instructions: keep things running smoothly, ensure Liam wasn't disturbed by trivial matters, and most importantly, remain in the background. She had every intention of following those rules until she saw Eleanor approaching Liam with a practiced ease that sent an unexplainable spark of irritation through her. Gabriella wasn't jealous. That would be ridiculous. But something about the way Eleanor touched Liam's arm, the way she leaned in with whispered words, unsettled her. She turned away, forcing herself to focus on her job. She had no place in Liam Calloway's personal affairs. And then a voice behind her shattered that illusion. "You look stunning." She turned, startled to find Liam standing there, his gaze sweeping over her. She had chosen a simple, elegant black gown not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because blending in was part of her role. Yet, under his scrutiny, she felt exposed in a way she hadn't expected. "You clean up well too," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. Something flickered in his expression: approval, amusement, something else. "Are you enjoying the evening?" She lifted her chin. "I'm working." Liam's gaze didn't waver. "That wasn't my question." She hesitated, then exhaled. "It's overwhelming." He nodded slightly as if he understood. "These events are less about charity and more about power. Every conversation is calculated, every interaction a negotiation." Gabriella studied him. "And what do you get out of it?" His lips curved, but there was something almost tired in his eyes. "Control." Before she could respond, a waiter approached, whispering something in Liam's ear. His expression darkened slightly, and he turned to her. "Stay close." Gabriella barely had time to process his words before he was leading her toward the far end of the room, where a man stood waiting. He was older, dressed impeccably, but there was something sharp about his gaze. "Liam," the man greeted smoothly. "It's been a while." Liam's posture remained relaxed, but Gabriella could sense the tension beneath the surface. "Victor." The name sent a ripple of unease through her. Victor Langston, one of the most powerful real estate moguls in the country. Ruthless, unforgiving, Victor's gaze flickered to Gabriella. "And you are," Gabriella met his stare evenly. "His assistant," Victor hummed. "Interesting choice." Liam's voice was cool. "She's more than capable." Victor studied her for a long moment before turning back to Liam. "We should talk." "Privately?" Liam didn't move. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." Victor's expression didn't change, but Gabriella saw the slightest flicker of something annoyance, perhaps. "Very well," Victor said. "I came to remind you that your position in this world is not untouchable. You may think you've built an empire, but one misstep." He trailed off, the implication clear. Gabriella tensed, but Liam remained unmoved. "I don't make missteps." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving a charged silence in his wake. Gabriella turned to Liam. "What was that?" Liam exhaled slowly. "A warning." Her stomach tightened. "Should I be worried?" Liam's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "No." But something in his tone told her that wasn't entirely true. Gabriella had never been more aware of Liam Calloway than she was now. The gala had revealed layers to him that she hadn't expected: his unflinching authority, the way he commanded attention without raising his voice, the unspoken tension between him and Victor Langston that hinted at a history she didn't yet understand. But more than that, it was the way he had stood beside her, subtly shielding her from the silent battle of power unfolding around them. Something had shifted between them that night. In the days that followed, Gabriella found herself watching Liam more closely, noticing the way his jaw tightened when he was deep in thought, the rare flash of amusement in his eyes when she said something unexpected, the way he always seemed to ensure she wasn't overwhelmed, even as he pushed her to keep up. She told herself it was just professional admiration, that she was simply learning how to navigate his world. But when he called her into his office late one evening, something in his expression told her this conversation would be different. Liam sat at his desk, his tie loosened ever so slightly, the first sign of exhaustion she had ever seen on him. He gestured for her to sit, and she did, waiting. "I need you to pack a bag," he said. Gabriella frowned. "Excuse me?" "There's a business trip," he explained. 3 days, I need you with me." She hesitated, caught off guard. "Where are we going?" "Paris." The single word sent a jolt through her. She had never been out of the country before, and now she was being swept into a world where international travel was as effortless as a morning meeting. She studied him carefully. "You trust me with something this important?" Liam's gaze held hers, steady and unreadable. "I wouldn't have hired you if I didn't." Something about the quiet certainty in his voice settled inside her, warm and undeniable. She nodded. "All right." "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning." Gabriella barely had time to process it before he stood, signaling the conversation was over, but as she rose to leave, he spoke again. "Gabriella," she turned back, his expression softened just the slightest bit. "You're doing well." Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to keep her voice even. "So are you." Liam let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Then she walked out, her heart pounding against her ribs. The flight to Paris was nothing short of surreal. Gabriella had expected a first-class seat, maybe a private section. She hadn't expected an entire jet. The interior was sleek and impossibly luxurious, with plush leather seating and a bar stocked with drinks she couldn't even pronounce. She had barely settled into her seat when Liam took the one across from her, watching her reaction with quiet amusement. "Not what you're used to?" he asked. She exhaled. "That obvious?" He leaned back, studying her. "You adapt quickly, that's rare." Gabriella met his gaze, feeling the weight of his unspoken words. Everything about Liam Calloway was calculated: his business, his decisions, even the way he observed people. And yet, she got the distinct feeling that with her, he wasn't strategizing. That thought unsettled her more than the jet itself. They spent most of the flight going over schedules and last-minute details, but as the hours passed, their conversation shifted. Liam asked about her life before this, about why she had stayed at a company that had discarded her so easily. Gabriella answered honestly, surprised by how easily the words came. And then, for the first time, Liam shared something personal. "My father built an empire," he said. "And he nearly destroyed it before I took over." Gabriella listened, sensing the weight behind his words. He didn't speak about his past often, she had noticed that quickly. But now, as they soared miles above the earth, he offered her a glimpse into the life that had shaped him. "I had to rebuild everything," he continued. "Prove that I wasn't just living off his success. That's why I don't tolerate failure." Gabriella hesitated before speaking. "And do you think you've proven it?" Liam held her gaze, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "I thought so." She felt the shift in the air between them, the quiet understanding that neither of them were quite the same people they had been before meeting each other. She wasn't sure what it meant, but she knew it was dangerous. Paris was a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and high-stakes discussions, but amidst the chaos, something unspoken continued to build between them. Gabriella wasn't sure when she started noticing the way Liam's gaze lingered on her just a second too long, or how his hand would brush against hers when he guided her through a crowded room. It was subtle, unspoken, but undeniable. And then, on their last night in Paris, everything changed. They had just wrapped up a dinner meeting, walking back toward the hotel when the city lights cast a soft glow over the cobblestone streets. The air was crisp, the quiet hum of Parisian life surrounding them. Gabriella paused, taking it all in. "This feels like something out of a dream." Liam watched her, his expression unreadable. "Does it?" she nodded, turning to face him. "I never thought I'd be here, not like this." There was something different in his gaze now, a quiet intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "You belong here," he said softly. Gabriella's breath caught. "Liam." He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until she could feel the warmth of him. "You're not just my assistant, Gabriella," he murmured. "You never were." Her heart pounded as she searched his face, trying to find some sign that this was a mistake, that she had imagined the tension between them. But there was no hesitation in his expression, and when he reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek, she didn't pull away. She didn't want to. The city moved around them, but in that moment, it felt like there was nothing else. No job, no rules, no expectations, just them. Gabriella wasn't sure who closed the distance first, but suddenly, his lips were on hers, and the world tilted. It wasn't tentative or hesitant, it was everything that had been building between them since the moment they met. It was intense, consuming, the kind of kiss that shattered every line they had carefully drawn. When they finally pulled apart, Gabriella's breath was unsteady, her hands still gripping the front of his jacket. Liam's gaze was dark, his voice rough. "Tell me this isn't a mistake." She swallowed hard, knowing there was no going back now. "It's not." Liam exhaled, his forehead resting against hers for just a second before he pulled her back into another kiss, one that sealed the truth between them. Whatever this was, it had already begun, and neither of them wanted to stop it. Gabriella awoke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through the Parisian hotel suite's sheer curtains. The previous night unraveled in her mind like a reel of stolen moments, the warmth of Liam's touch, the weight of his gaze, the way the city had faded into nothing when his lips met hers. She sat up slowly, the cool sheets pooling around her waist as she took in the unfamiliar opulence surrounding her. The decor was sleek, understated in a way that spoke of effortless wealth. A tray of fresh croissants and coffee rested on the table near the window, a silent gesture that made something tighten in her chest. Liam had already left for a morning meeting, his absence leaving behind a strange emptiness. She exhaled, pressing her fingers lightly against her lips as if trying to hold onto the sensation of what had happened. They had crossed a line, and now she had to figure out what that meant. She dressed quickly, choosing a simple navy dress that felt professional enough to remind herself of where she stood. By the time she reached the lobby, Liam was already waiting near the entrance, engaged in a quiet conversation with a man Gabriella didn't recognize. Liam's presence commanded the space effortlessly, his posture relaxed yet authoritative. As if sensing her, his gaze lifted, locking onto hers with an intensity that made her pulse stutter. The man beside him said something, but Liam barely acknowledged it. Instead, he stepped toward Gabriella, his expression unreadable. She forced herself to keep her voice steady. "I didn't want to be late." Liam's lips parted slightly, as if he was about to say something, but then his phone buzzed. His jaw tightened as he glanced at the screen. Whatever message he had received had shifted his mood instantly. Without a word, he handed her a small envelope. She frowned, taking it hesitantly. Inside was a sleek black invitation with gold lettering, an exclusive business gala, tonight. Her stomach tightened. "Is this another work obligation?" Liam's gaze remained locked on her. "It's more than that." She waited, but he didn't elaborate. Instead, he turned sharply, already moving toward the waiting car. Something was coming. She could feel it. And whatever it was, she wasn't sure she was ready. The evening arrived faster than Gabriella would have liked. She stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the fabric of the gown Liam had arranged for her. It was different from the one she had worn at his previous gala. This one was more daring, with a delicate open back and a slit that hinted at elegance and confidence all in one. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Liam stood on the other side, dressed in a sharp black tuxedo that made it nearly impossible to breathe. His gaze swept over her, and for a moment he didn't speak. Then, quietly, "You look incredible." She swallowed hard. "Is this really just about business?" Liam hesitated, something flickering in his expression that she couldn't quite place. Then he extended his arm. "Trust me." She wasn't sure if it was an invitation or a warning, but she took his arm anyway. The gala was unlike anything Gabriella had ever experienced. If the previous event had been about power, this one was about legacy. The room was filled with industry giants, whispered alliances forming in the corners, champagne flowing like currency. Liam moved through the crowd with effortless precision, introducing her to men and women whose names carried weight. Yet despite the sea of faces, his presence remained tethered to hers, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, his attention shifting to her between conversations as if silently ensuring she wasn't overwhelmed. Then, just as she was beginning to find her footing, a familiar voice sliced through the air. "I see you're still collecting strays, Liam." Gabriella turned sharply to find Eleanor Whitmore standing before them, her expression cool and poised. Liam's posture stiffened, but his voice remained even. "Eleanor." The woman's gaze flickered to Gabriella, something almost amused in her eyes. "And you're still here." "Impressive." Gabriella met her stare without flinching. "I don't scare easily." Eleanor's lips curved ever so slightly. "That remains to be seen." Before Gabriella could respond, Liam spoke, his voice edged with something darker. "If you have something to say, Eleanor, say it." Eleanor tilted her head, assessing. "You're different with her." Silence stretched between them. Gabriella's pulse pounded in her ears. Liam didn't deny it. Eleanor's smile was sharp as she turned away. "Be careful, Gabriella. Falling for a man like him is never simple." Gabriella exhaled once Eleanor disappeared into the crowd, her mind spinning. Liam remained quiet beside her, but his hand pressed slightly firmer against her back, grounding her. "Ignore her," he murmured. Gabriella turned to him then, searching his face. "Is she right?" Liam's expression was unreadable, but there was something raw in his gaze. Before he could answer, Victor Langston appeared. The energy in the room shifted. Victor's smile was practiced, but his eyes were sharp. "Liam, I was beginning to wonder if you were avoiding me." Liam's grip on Gabriella's waist tightened slightly. "We both know I don't avoid anything." Victor's gaze flickered to Gabriella. "And yet you've brought a distraction." Liam's voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. "Gabriella is not a distraction," Victor hummed. "No, then let's see how much she really knows." Gabriella held her ground as Victor studied her. "This world is built on control," Victor said smoothly. "Men like Liam don't let anything get in their way. The question is, are you in his way or are you part of the game?" Gabriella met his stare, something shifting inside her. She wasn't just here as an employee anymore. She wasn't just someone caught in Liam Calloway's orbit. She was standing beside him, and she wasn't backing down. "Maybe," she said evenly, "I make my own rules." Victor's eyes gleamed with something unreadable. Then he laughed. Liam's hand at her waist remained steady. For the first time, Gabriella realized this wasn't just about business. This was about something far more dangerous, and she wasn't sure if she was ready, but she wasn't walking away. Gabriella had never been one to let fear dictate her choices, but as she stood beside Liam, Victor Langston's words lingered in the back of her mind. She wasn't blind to what was happening. This wasn't just corporate politics, it was a power struggle, and somehow she had become a piece on the board. But Liam's hand remained firm at her waist, his presence anchoring her in the sea of whispered conversations and veiled threats. He wasn't the kind of man who let others dictate his life, and she refused to be a woman who let herself become a pawn. As the night stretched on, she noticed the subtle shift in Liam's demeanor. He was still composed, still in control, but there was a new tension in his posture, a quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. He was thinking, calculating. When the event finally wound down and the last of the guests trickled out, Liam led her through a side exit, bypassing the lingering photographers and curious eyes. The Parisian air was crisp, the city alive with the hum of the night. They walked in silence for a stretch, the weight of the evening pressing down on both of them. Finally, Gabriella stopped, turning to face him. He met her gaze, something flickering in his expression, something raw, unguarded. She didn't ask if he was all right. Liam Calloway was always all right. Instead, she asked the question that had been circling in her mind since Victor's words. "What is this between us?" Liam didn't look away, didn't deflect. He simply studied her for a long moment before answering. "Something I can't ignore." Her breath hitched, because it was the truth, undeniable and unspoken until now. "I need to know if this is real," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Liam exhaled, his hands coming to rest on her arms, his grip gentle but firm. "It's real." She searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, but there was none, and then he kissed her. This time, there was no hesitation, no lingering uncertainty. It was deep and consuming, a promise sealed beneath the glow of the Parisian streetlights. When they finally pulled apart, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "I don't let people in easily," he admitted, his voice quieter now, "but you were never just my assistant." Her heart pounded at the confession because she had felt it too. From the moment she stepped into his world, something had been shifting between them, something inevitable. But before she could respond, Liam's phone buzzed sharply, cutting through the moment. He pulled it out, his expression darkening instantly. "We need to leave," he said, already moving. Gabriella didn't ask questions, she followed. The flight back to New York was different from the one that had brought them to Paris. There was an urgency now, an unspoken weight between them. Liam was on the phone for most of the journey, his voice clipped as he spoke in low tones. Gabriella listened, piecing together fragments of the conversation. It was about the company, about something being set in motion in his absence. By the time they landed, she knew one thing for certain: Victor Langston had made his move. Liam wasted no time. The moment they stepped into the waiting car, he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I need you to trust me." Gabriella nodded without hesitation. "I do," and she meant it. The next 48 hours were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and crisis control. Victor had made an aggressive bid to undermine Liam's holdings, leveraging old alliances and whispered doubts to shake the foundation of what Liam had built. But Liam Calloway didn't break. Gabriella watched as he maneuvered through it all with a precision that was almost ruthless. He was relentless, countering every move with one of his own, ensuring that Victor's play would crumble before it could gain momentum. She had seen him in control before, but never like this. And through it all, she was by his side, not just as his assistant, not just as someone caught in the crossfire, but as his partner. By the time the dust settled, Victor Langston was left with nothing but a failed attempt at control. And Liam had won. Gabriella was in his office when the final confirmation came through. Liam leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "It's over," he said, more to himself than to her. She crossed the room, standing in front of him. "You knew it would be." His gaze lifted to hers, something softer settling in his expression. "Not without you." Her breath caught because it wasn't just gratitude in his voice, it was something deeper, something permanent. He stood then, reaching for her, pulling her into him with the same certainty he approached everything in his life. "I love you," he murmured, the words quiet but unshakable. Gabriella's heart swelled because she had known it before he even said it. And as she looked up at him, she knew there was only one answer. "I love you too." Liam's smile was rare, but when it came, it was breathtaking, and when he kissed her this time, it wasn't just passion. It was forever. 2 years later, Gabriella stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse, watching the sun set over the city. She heard the familiar sound of Liam's footsteps before she felt his arms wrap around her from behind. "Thinking about running away?" he teased against her ear. She laughed softly, leaning into him. "Not a chance." His grip tightened, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Good." She turned in his arms, reaching up to brush her fingers along his jaw. "You did it, you know. You built something no one can take from you." Liam's gaze softened. "We did." Gabriella smiled, pressing a kiss to his lips, because this was theirs, their empire. Their love, and nothing could take it away.